Hey, everybody. Welcome to the MOBB Mentality Podcast. This is the podcast that is made for moms of busy babies. And I have Miss Lisa Sakai with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
This is going to be an exciting episode because we both talk about bucket lists. So we are going to talk about accelerating your bucket list today. So I'm excited to see what that means to you and how you can help other women get started on that. You're with One Vision Retirement. So we're going to talk about creating some financial freedom, I feel like. And then on another side of things that I want to be able to get into with you is helping women and moms overcome this guilt that comes from investing in themselves in whatever realm that may be. So I think that's something a lot of women struggle with. So I want to make sure that I get your expert opinion on that today as well.
Absolutely. I love all those topics. Let's go into it. I'm definitely happy to talk about those.
Let's get after it. So I'm so excited that you're here. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of background about yourself and like what led you here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh gosh, hopefully my camera comes back. I will put it to another one while I'm talking. So essentially what I do is I've been doing this for 13 years and I've been working with primarily people on their planning. And it's been kind of in the more traditional side of things. Let me see if I can get my camera back on while I'm talking. And so essentially, let's see if that works. All right. Sorry about that. Anyhow, which it's live, we got to just go with it, right?
That's what we do as women. Just keep on moving through.
Just keep going with it. So
it'll come
got
back.
me looking very inquisitive. Anyhow, so so essentially what I've been doing is for 13 years doing more like traditional planning and that kind of thing. But what has happened more recently, I'd say probably in the 5 or 6 years, is that women aren't putting themselves first. They are really in there trying to take care of everybody else and not putting what they truly want in the forefront, whether that's with their families, whether that's with, their friends, with their anybody really. We always put ourselves last, mainly because we think that that's our giving nature, right? And what I want women to do is really put together a bucket list that makes them enthusiastic and passionate about their lives and really start living the life that they love now and not wait for retirement, not wait for it will be my time, right?
I love that.
And so basically what we do is we focus on, traditional financial planning and that kind of thing. But we also will focus on bucket list planning because it's really hard to plan for something 30 years from now. It's a lot easier to plan for something a year or two from now that you really get to reap the benefits. So if that's going to Bali or to Dublin, or if that's skydiving, or if that's just finishing a book, I mean, whatever that thing is for you, exciting. That is that time that you can really feel like you're in your financial independence. That's the most important thing.
That is awesome. What are some of those steps? Can you begin to walk us through like how you create the bucket list?
Yeah. So the first step is to make a list, right? And everybody makes a list and we do that goal planning and all that kind of stuff, right? But from there, it's really about how do you put detail around it? Okay. How can we really make it sing for us and make it actually work for motivation? Because honestly, most of the time,
you're back.
Yeah, I got it to work. When you took a second, I was able to figure it out. Okay. So anyhow, when you're able to put some detail around it, and when I mean detail, I mean like the 5 senses. How are you going to feel when it happens? What is it going to look like? What is the smell going to be like? What is what is it going to sound like? All of that stuff has to be in place, because if you don't have that real emotional raw feeling for your bucket list item, it's never going to come true, because we all are going to fail at some point, right? We're going to start doing things and maybe get off track or maybe not get our planning in order. And essentially we're going to have to make, we're going to have to get through and motivate ourselves. So having a really strong why and visual and emotional attachment to that bucket list item is really important. So choosing one and getting really deep into it is a big key to doing this kind of thing.
I agree with you so much. That's what I was going to pull from it. It's like you have to know your why when you're going for a big vision, especially because it can feel really like far out or really unattainable. Exactly. And it's like, okay, so what are you going to grasp to? What are you going to hold on to when adversity hits?
Exactly. No, I totally agree with that. And so essentially, if you don't have your why, I think Tony Robbins says this, you have to have a motivating future, right? Or something like that.
Yep.
You kind of have to have that vision of what your life is going to be like. And it's got to be really strong, or you're not going to necessarily believe you can accomplish it. And there will be months that you don't hit your savings goals. There will be many months you don't hit your savings goals. And that's okay. What's going to get you through that is that motivating why.
Can you give us some baby steps? Like, so say that you're working with me and I love your big like vacation goal. So mine is to go to Bali. Like that's one of my big bucket lists. Okay. So what would you tell me in order to do to be able to get started towards that big vision?
Yeah. So I think we have to get that feeling around it. And part of that is getting a price, right? So we actually need to know, what are we going to spend on this? So, if it's a vision that we're thinking maybe 2 or 3 years, maybe you add a little bit of percentage on there for inflation and for other things that happen, right? Nobody has ever said I saved too much for a vacation. So
never heard that.
Yeah. And so while you're pulling together the pictures and the feelings and all that stuff, you're also going to put together a price tag on it. And you're going to basically take your savings rate, whatever you're saving, and we're going to take a part of it and put it into that bucket list and bucket for your bucket list, basically. And then we'll slowly start to take out that percentage of whatever you saved, if it's 500, if it's 200, if it's 1,000, whatever it is, part of that's going to go into your bucket list bucket.
Okay.
And be put away for the future. And you just start working towards it. So you're moving everything in alignment with each other so that you're actually able to experience your life while you're saving for your bigger, badder goals that might be 20 years from now. So it's all about doing it all in alignment, essentially.
That makes total sense. So even if I'm hearing you correctly, so we want to be able to even financially plan for these bigger long-term goals but it's like we have to have something in the short term to really motivate us. Yeah. And we have to have a reward.
Yeah. We don't celebrate ourselves enough. And life goes so fast, right? And if you sit back, it's with that Ferris Bueller thing. If you sit back and, you might miss it, right? You might miss life. Yeah. We don't want that happening. I mean, unfortunately, we have so much disease and other things that happen over time that maybe when you hit 65, your retirement age, you're not able to do what you want to do. And that would be heartbreaking for anybody. And so essentially, we really want to focus on the life that you want now and not derail you from setting yourself up to keep doing it down the line. Because really the hardest one is the first one. But then from there, you kind of got this system in place so that you can keep going. You might have some money left over. That's why I would say the first one, go a little higher than what you think. Because now we have a starting seed to go to the next one. And maybe the next one's not as expensive. Maybe it's not Bali. Maybe it's, I don't know, buying a bike for yourself and, going on the trail that you've been wanting to go on. That might not be as expensive. So you might get to that really fast compared to the Bali trip.
This reminds me so much of like conversations that I feel like having with women that, and a sad conversation that I have with so many people is like, oh, I'm waiting till my 50th birthday, or I'm waiting till I retire to invest in myself, to take that trip. And I'm like, but life is right now. Like you're living life right now. It's like, why are you going to wait to take care of yourself? And this has the same punch with it. It's like, you never know what could happen tomorrow. And this is a reminder for people that it's like, you have to take action today and live your life to the fullest. And that even comes with financial planning. I used to be that person. It's like financial planning was all about retirement. And what do I want life to look like when I'm not working?
It's not.
And it's like, no, it's not at all. It's such a shift.
No, it is. Retirement is really financial independence, right? That's the key, is that everybody's really searching for, when can I make any changes we want to make in our life without having a major financial issue, which is like, you know, when can I change jobs? When can I slow down? When can I go back to school and get a master's and blah, blah, blah. That's what people want. They want to have complete freedom to have the money set aside so that they can do anything. That's what retirement is nowadays. Is when do I have enough money so I can live the life I want to? Because so many people, aren't retiring anymore. They're got another side hustle. They're volunteering, which I don't consider retirement. They're working harder than probably when they were working, doing wonderful things in the community. They're traveling, they're doing all this stuff. They're not just sitting at home watching, you know, The Price is Right or whatever's on during the day anymore. Like, they're out enjoying their lives, contributing, making new friends, moving to new areas, all this stuff. And the thing that's really interesting is that if you don't know who you are before you retire, meaning experience your life, take care of yourself, do some of the things that you've been wanting to do beforehand, you really won't know who you are in retirement. And that can, be very catastrophic to your self-being, because if you've identified yourself as a working mom, and now you're not working and your kids are in other states doing their things and don't need you as much, who are you? That's how you've identified yourself, right? No, we need to have a different identity attached to ourselves before retirement, because that can be mentally draining on us. The other thing is it can be super expensive, because if you don't know what you want and you just start spending money on all this stuff, trying to find out what's going to make you happy in retirement, well, income's turned off at that point. I don't have that ability to reset, to rebuild, to do any of that stuff. So it can be very expensive. I was on a different podcast and the lady was talking to me about her friend who he had always wanted to go fly fishing. This was his vision of what retirement was going to be. And he waited till retirement and he bought the boat. He bought all the gear. I can't even imagine how much this was. And he went out for a weekend, his first weekend fly fishing. He hated it. Hated it. He said he'd never been more bored in his life. And that's expensive hating. You know, wouldn't it have been nice if he had just like rented a couple things and done that maybe before he retired? And now he's trying to find out who he is. And it's very difficult when you feel like you are one person, or this is what your life's going to look like, and it turns out to be something completely different than that. It's a mind shift. It can be really difficult to get through that.
Yeah. I think you brought up something that's so important, is it's like waiting to find out who you are, the things that bring you joy till your kids are gone or retirement, and how impactful that can be to yourself, because your identity has been so wrapped up into just one thing. And
exactly.
I mean, all transparency, like that was very much me before I had kids. Is like I was very professionally driven and I worked a whole lot, and it's like that's still a big part of my identity, and I enjoy working. But now it's like, okay, that's not everything. Like that's not who I am.
Yeah.
It's only a piece.
Totally.
So I want to ask you some hard questions.
Okay. Go for it.
Okay. So if someone listening is like, okay, yeah, this sounds great. A trip to Bali sounds great. You know, having a fly fishing hobby sounds fantastic. But I literally am living paycheck to paycheck right now. I have no extra money to do anything. What's your advice to them of where they start?
Yeah, I still think you put the dream in place, because the problem is, let's say you're making, you know, $50,000 a year. That is not that much, especially with inflation, depending on where you live, all that stuff. You can definitely feel the pinch of everything with that. And especially with kids and everything, they don't understand that stuff. So they want the new thing that everybody's talking about at school, and you can't always provide that, right? So it's difficult. And so what we immediately do is we say, well, all of my extra resources are going to my kids to make them happy. But realistically, what kids remember is, and I used to be a teacher, so I do know this part. What kids remember is that they remember the experiences they had with you. I don't really remember sitting and having my like new Barbie dream house thing that, I mean, I do, but I don't really remember that. I remember the experiences I had playing with my mom with that.
Right.
You know, or it's the experiences. And so oftentimes we put monetary things to try to provide for other people when really they would much prefer, your kids as adults are going to much prefer you to take care of yourself and to make sure that you're healthy, that you've taken, you know, you've put good food, you've exercised, you've done what you want to do, and that you're passionate about something, and you've put some money away for yourself. So I think that if you don't have dreams outside of your nuclear family or even your extended family, then you're really missing that opportunity to teach your kids something that's greater than themselves, right? That is a dream that can happen. Maybe it won't happen, you know, within the next year. Bali is expensive, you know, but I hate to say it, there are college kids traveling around all over the country doing it on like a couple of grand. So it's not like you got to go to these like $10,000 a day resorts. You could make it work if your dream is to go to Bali. Now, if your dream is to have a 4-star vacation, that's going to take a little longer, but it's what you decide your dream wants to be. And I still say that you should take a portion of your savings and put it towards that, because even if something happens and your emergency fund, which always should be in place, I don't care how much money you make, you always need to have that, because as soon as that emergency fund is in place, you are no longer living paycheck to paycheck.
That's great.
Just as an FYI, no longer living paycheck to paycheck because you have savings. The problem that we have is we live too lean. Like most people can't afford $1,000 something that comes up, whether it's an auto repair or something that comes up that creates huge amount of stress on them. And once you have your emergency fund set up, which is traditionally like 3 months of expenses, then you are no longer living paycheck to paycheck. That $1,000 comes up and you are able to do it without having to dip into other things. Fantastic. So that takes care of that. And once you've got your emergency fund set, well, you're already used to saving something. So why not put it towards longer term savings goals and to a bucket list? And, you know, we hear all the time about these people that are, you know, not making that much money or not doing, but they are disciplined on putting money aside for themselves and their future because they know that that will take care of their families in the long run.
Where are some of those?
It's just about discipline.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's.
I even wanted to ask you, where are some of those places? So I know you said it's like the money, because we spend ridiculous amounts of money on our kids. So it's like, you know, not necessarily buying these boutique pajamas that are ridiculous nowadays. Boutique pajamas for our kids. So it's like, hey, let's go and buy some Sam's Club pajamas and we can put that extra $40 towards our bucket list. But where are some of those other places that you find that people are spending excess money in that can actually be saved?
Yeah. Eating out and wasting food are two huge areas. So a lot of times, especially working moms, will go to the grocery store over the weekend, buy a healthy food because we're going to be healthy this week. And then by Wednesday, they're like, we're done. I'm tired. I can't do this anymore. And they do orders in or they do whatever. And essentially, one is the Uber Eats and all that stuff. While they're wonderful services, there are so many fees attached to that.
Yes.
I was dumbfounded. Like, I don't use those apps, and I was in Charlotte last week at doing a speaking event. And I was looking at it, I was like, I can't believe how expensive this is. To get a $12 something, I'm paying $30.
Yes.
That's a lot. So really rethink. Eating out is one thing, but paying extra fees on top of that, that might be an area you want to pull back on. But if you know yourself and you know, look, we're going to eat out. Like, I've tried this. This is just what we're going to do. Don't buy all the groceries then. Because what they're doing is they're going in the trash.
Yes.
And we're basically double buying food for the week, instead of just saying, look, I'm going to eat out 3 times this week and it's okay. And I forgive myself and it's okay. Yes. And just don't buy the extra groceries, because we end up spending a ton of money trying to do the good thing when really we should just live our lives and do what we need to do, and stop trying to be good and just do what's right for you.
I completely believe that. And that's one major area when I am doing a lot of initial phone calls with people, and, just finding out, like, what does that lifestyle look like? And I agree with you. It's like, we're either spending way too much money on going out to eat. Yeah. It's like, there's your bucket list, like whatever your bucket list may be. And I totally agree with also on, it's like, you trying to be good. And it's like, we want to fit this mold. And I mean, it's even people, it's like, if they want to buy organic versus non-organic, I'm like, that little bit of extra money from organic to a vegetable is a vegetable. I'm like, I'd much rather you be eating any kind of vegetable than an organic vegetable. And it's like, but use that money, towards your bucket list. So I love that. It's like, so I agree. Yeah. Is there another like just huge area?
Absolutely.
That stands out?
Absolutely. Because it gets me from time to time. Online shopping, and particularly Instagram and Facebook ads that pop up, right? Because they follow us and they know what we're looking at. And then they immediately, this amazing product comes up that just answers all of our dreams, right? And the biggest thing with the Instagram and the Facebook ads, and I'm not on TikTok and stuff, but maybe they're there as well. But the biggest thing about that is we have this like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to see this ad again. Like it's going to go away. And so I need to purchase it now. They've got the urgency thing down. It's kind of like those old commercials at like late at night, the infomercial commercials. And we had to call because we might never see that infomercial again. And I need that mop or whatever it was. Right. Yes. And there are people that have all this stuff from those infomercials because of that need to do it, because you might forget or you might not see it again, So we have that same kind of thing that happens on Instagram. And a really good trick is to never buy products from social media. Okay. So there's always a share option on there, and you can share it to yourself and email it to yourself. So in the future, you can look at it. And I tell you, most of the time, I just delete stuff without even looking at it. I didn't need it. And we do this, it's $20. It's only $25. It's only blah, blah, blah. But I heard a great saying on one of the Netflix, I don't know which one it was, but one of the Netflix ones about money, their documentaries on money. And he said, $10 million is built $10 at a time.
That's right.
And it's so true. And so this thing of talking ourselves into stuff because we might not see it again, we might feeling stressed or depressed or anything like that. Just take that away and just have a rule that you are not buying anything directly from social media. You're going to put it aside. And then if you still want to buy it, then you can. But that will cut back a ton of purchases. Same thing with Amazon. If you put it in the cart and say, I have a 24-hour rule, I don't buy stuff, you will forget about it.
That's
you
fantastic.
Will totally forget about it.
I love that. So eating out, buying extra groceries, ad shopping.
Yeah,
ad
shopping.
Online shopping. Okay.
Yeah, that will save a lot of money.
Thought about the ad shopping, but you're right. It's like you do. It's like they know exactly what you want and what you're looking at talking about. So that's fantastic. Yeah. So if you wouldn't even mind, because you talked about like this, 24-hour rule, Do you know of any other good, what's your favorite apps? What's your favorite resources as far as saving and beginning to put some money aside?
Yeah. So a lot of my clients will use Mint
Okay.
.com and other ones like that. I don't really have a favorite. You've got to
Okay.
find the one that works for you. The one that works for you is the one you use.
Okay.
So sometimes they're a little too complicated. They get too, but I always say be careful when you're doing a budget, because a budget is only really as good as the day you put it together. And then you don't keep it up. And then 3 months later, you're mad at yourself because you spent like 4 hours putting this budget together and now you're not following it.
Yes.
Right. And so I would say use apps like that to just be conscious of what you're spending your money on and being aware of where you're putting your money, rather than necessarily using it to budget yourself.
Okay.
You have a good sense. Women know. We know if we're overspending or if we're not. We do. You just look at your credit cards. Your credit cards will tell you everything. Because if you bring in, $3,000 after tax into your house every month and your credit card's 4, you're overspending.
Right.
It's just, and realistically, if you're paying rent and then it's 2 or it's 1,500, you're probably overspending, right? Because that probably it's going to have to be around 1,000 or 1,200 to fit within your budget. So I think it's really about being really aware of where your money is being spent and deciding if you're being mindful in your spending rather than not. So a good example is I was talking to a lady once, and she was one of those Starbucks people. She'd go and she'd get Starbucks every day. That was her treat, right? She didn't smoke, she didn't drink, it was her Starbucks treat. And we got a better why for her. And she just decided on her own, I don't tell people where to spend their money. I don't want somebody telling me to do that. People are grown people. They are going to figure out what they want to do. And so we were talking about other stuff, but we weren't talking about this. And she decided after a couple of weeks to stop going to Starbucks, because she said she doesn't even taste it anymore. She used to love her, I think she got a latte. I don't know exactly what she used to get, but she said, I can't even taste it anymore because it's not really, it's a habit. It's not really something that I desire anymore. And it's not special anymore because I get it every day. And so she decided she was just going to do it on Fridays. And then she even pulled back to I think she only gets it maybe twice a month now, when she really feels like she deserves a treat. And she saved $200, $300 a month by doing that.
On one habit.
Yeah, one habit. And she enjoys it so much more. She's like, it actually brings a smile to my face. Whereas before I'd just be mindlessly having my muffin and having my latte. And she actually lost a little weight too, because, what she was eating was not fantastic for her. So
I love that you just combined it all. That's what it's about right there. It's we get to actually have some self-care in there. We get a reward, we get a treat, but then we get to lose some weight too and save some money. I'm like, how can you go wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly. She just wanted to bring the joy back into it. And sometimes you have to cut back in order to bring joy back to that kind of stuff.
I'm still in that right there. That's good. We have to cut back in order to get some joy. So what is something so I deal with a lot of women. I said I coach a lot of women, and a lot of women have a lot of guilt associated with investing in themselves. Because when I'm counseling, when I'm coaching, I tell them, it's this is all about you. I'm here to support you. And so it's that level of investment that comes from okay, I'm going to take this time for myself. I'm going to pay this money. I'm going to do these things for me. And they're like, oh, I feel so bad that I'm not investing these resources in my home or in things that my kids want or whatever. So what's some of your advice to them that deal with this financial guilt?
It's a great question. Guilt's always going to be there. I tend to be a worrier. I tend to be a guilty soul. When I grew up, I was always guilty about money. I was spending, even though I grew up in a very, we were fine as a family. My dad was an orthopedic surgeon. We were good. And yet I was always guilty when I'd spend money. And I
Okay.
don't know where that came from, but I know it doesn't go away, right?
Okay.
And so what I can say is being aware that that is coming and attacking it head on is probably the best thing that I have found for myself. You have to find what works for you. But for me, when I start to feel it, I sit back and I go, why am I feeling this way?
Okay.
What needs to change in order for me to stop feeling like this? And half the time the guilt comes from us not taking enough time to really think through things. We move so fast, everything's got to be fast, fast, fast. And instead of taking some time and really thinking through a decision, we just do it. And then we're like, oh, well, we could have done this or we could have done that with this money. And realistically, the things that we're saying we could have done, could you have though? I mean, like, let's say you spent $100 going to get a massage because you needed a massage, your back was killing you, you needed that time, right? Where is that going to go in your household that's really going to make a huge impact? Like, you can't get your tile redone with $100. Like,
Yeah, but
like,
you feel like it's going to make this bigger impact.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And you kind of wonder too, how much of the things we think we should be doing, like we should be doing this, we should be doing that, are more social pressures than actually what we want. Because if we go back to like the household things, right? We always think that we should have this like immaculate house that looks like Restoration Hardware or, one of those things. And it's funny because we live in, my husband and I moved to Northern Arizona and we live in an older community where there's a lot of older people here and every living room looks exactly the same. And I think that's hysterical because I remember the times when like my grandmothers and things like that, they didn't redo their kitchen to make it look a certain way. Every house had a little bit of extra character to it because it was just the way they were. And they weren't like, oh, I need to get my Formica changed. Like they would do it when it was falling apart, or something like that. It wasn't like these huge renovations that we do. And it's kind of a keep up with the Joneses thing more than it is about what we truly want, And so it's really thinking about, do I really want an immaculate looking house for other people to enjoy? Yes. Or am I really okay with, I'll be very frank, our house is not set up like that. We don't have a lot of people over. I don't like hosting people, so they don't come over. And so my brother came into our house once and was like, oh, this is kind of a nice man's cave house. I'm like, I'm okay with that. It's comfortable. We're comfortable in it. I don't need to make a spectacle for other people. And it's okay. And I saved a lot of money on furniture and other things I don't need to spend a lot of money on because who's going to see it? And I don't need it. And then I'll feel guilty because my $5,000 coffee table got nicked or something. Like, I don't want to have stuff like that. So I think a lot of times we put these shoulds on ourselves and the guilt comes from what we think society tells us that we should be, the good things, right? It's back to the roles, the good things that we should be doing rather than necessarily like, what do we truly want? And it's okay to have a messy house and it's okay to not have an immaculate backyard and it's okay to not drive the perfect car. It's okay. And as long as you're okay with it, then who cares?
Yeah. I love that. I agree with you on so many different levels. It's like we feel like we should be doing this. And I think women struggle with this so much. It's like we should be a certain way. And even when it comes to investing in ourselves, we're like, oh my God, look at her. Like she spent this money on herself instead of spending it on our kids. And it's like, okay, you investing money and making yourself healthier or happier and taking care of your physical, your mental state, and even being able to take your family on experiences rather than things is your kids value that. Like you said, that's what they remember. That's what they value so much more. Mom is able to play with me in the ocean and take me to the ocean instead of sit back and watch an ocean on TV.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I think in some respects, we think of like the 50s and 60s as these women who are trying to be perfect all the time. But realistically, like real women back then like if you went to the beach and you didn't have a towel, whatever.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like you just made it work. They didn't have the luxury of having all of this stuff perfect all the time. They didn't have sunscreen all the time. You know, I'm not saying don't have sunscreen,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? Like
Right.
it wasn't so like the rules, like you're a bad mom because you didn't bring, you know, SPF 100. You only brought SPF 30. I mean, like it's just like we get into this thing and we're so busy judging other people on the rules that society has told us that we're just not enjoying life as much anymore.
Mhm. I think that ties perfectly into your model, like right there, like
Yeah.
being able to financially plan, but according to like things that bring you joy, make you happy,
Yeah.
and know that why.
Yeah.
Love it.
That's what money is supposed to be. Joy. It is supposed to bring you joy. And we forget about that all the time.
Yep. Joy, happiness. Oh, I love it. So can you
Yeah.
tell everybody listening where they're able to connect with you at and what that process would look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on social media. I'm probably the most active on LinkedIn,
Okay.
but I just got my Facebook or not, I'm not Facebook, my Instagram page up. So it's
Cool.
Your Financial Vision Your Way. And so I'm going to start putting little snippet videos and just, you know, stuff to think about up there and some other things. So, and the other thing is that on our website, there's a bunch of resources. You mentioned baby steps earlier on. I think baby
Yes.
steps are totally underrated. And there's
Okay.
a piece called Baby Step Your Way to Financial Independence. And
Okay.
so people can go in there, you know, put their email and get the piece. And hopefully that will help them take little baby steps so that they can get better on their financial journey.
Great resource. I will actually link all those things in the description, and I will be tagging you in things that we can collaborate on as well. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
I'm excited.
Thank
Thank you
so
so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Good episode. I appreciate it.